Hey guys, it's 2Bricks, and I'm back with the next installment of my Star Wars Micro Fleet series, and today we're going to be looking at all of the ships that I have represented from Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. So this is a fairly small bunch, nothing huge like in the Phantom Menace, but yeah, there's still a fair range of different craft here, and I'm definitely excited to show all of those to you guys. This might have the most dodgy or illegal techniques of any of my collections so far, so I'm definitely excited to point those out to you guys. But yeah, without further ado, I just want to dive right in and get to it because there's a lot to get through. So the first ship that I have to show you is Slave 1 version 1, I guess. This is the the version of Slave 1 when it was under the ownership of Jango Fett instead of Boba Fett like in the originals. It's essentially a recolor of the first one. There's a couple of different parts that I've used, like for example these are the straight slopes and these are the curved bricks for the side. The reason that I went with these is because there's this little bit of yellow in the design, and these just give you that little bit of accommodation to be able to put those in there where these pieces don't allow for that. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much identical, just a color swap for the most part. You just got like, gray instead of the sand green, and blue instead of the red, obviously. But yeah, it's pretty much identical otherwise. I think it was in the Clone Wars series that this ship got potentially blown up. It was kind of off screen, so it was hard to tell if it just got really badly damaged or what. So I'm not even sure that this is the exact same ship that we saw later on, but for our purposes, it's basically the same. So if you're curious about any of the build techniques and stuff like that, they're pretty much the same as they were before. I'm just using this 2x1 brick with the studs on both sides to basically hold the whole central core of it together, and then yeah, just some interesting upside down building in there to be able to accommodate all of that. But nothing on that has changed since the other version, so check out my other video if you want a more in-depth look. But there is Slave 1 2, or Slave 1 1. And next up we have the Hailfire Droid, which is the only new piece of droid hardware that I have for this particular round. All of the previous ships from the Phantom Menace were present, the Vulture droids and the massive, the various different kind of huge droid army components were all there in Attack of the Clones, but this was a new one. It's essentially a giant kind of, well, it's like a giant wheel really, with a missile launcher attached in the middle, and it just rolls through the battlefield and just sprays. There's like this massive assembly of missiles right up here, and it just absolutely rains down destruction with all these different missiles. So like the Vulture droid, this is its own self-propelled thing, so it has like this sensing eye in the middle. It's weird to think that this is technically a character. It's just this giant rolling wheel. But yeah, I was really happy to get these tires recolored in gold from the recent Harry Potter sets. And if they could make these in like a dark tan or brown, it would be absolutely perfect for this. But as it is, this is, good enough to represent what this is supposed to be. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and just using these simple binocular pieces to represent the missile racks, I think works out pretty well. And then it's just clipped on upside down. The tires are clipped onto this little assembly which makes up the body, and then that is 2 clips plugged into 2 more clips, just holding the whole thing into the base. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting, weird, kind of unique design for a weapons platform, and it was definitely something that was iconic to that movie, so I'm really glad to have it in the fleet. Alright, and then before we get on to all of the Clone Army stuff, we have Obi Wans Delta 7 Jedi Starfighter. And this is such a cool looking little thing. It's super tiny, and it's got this really cool kind of dart configuration where it just looks so sleek and fast. And I really like the fact that they established the dark red color scheme for Obi Wan's Starfighter, and then carried that through into all of the Republic stuff, because it's kind of a cool little visual story point where in the last video I mentioned that Anakin's yellow color would follow him through his career. Well, Obi-Wan is sticking to kind of the Republic red, and that's just kind of a cool way to show where his allegiance lies versus Anakin's. So I really like that they did that, and then they continued that on into Revenge of the Sith with the color scheme of their starfighters as well. So this probably has some of the most dubious techniques that I've ever used for a Lego model. The way that this front piece is attached, it's essentially sandwiched in between these two plates, which I've put at a 45-degree angle so that you get a little bit of overhang. And then these two hand pieces on the side have just the ever so slightest bit of overhang on either side, where there's just a tiny area that this plate can slot into. And it's held in there pretty securely. It hasn't fallen off yet in the time that I've had it, but it's most definitely not a legal technique, that's for sure. And then I'm using a third minifigure hand up here to represent kind of the hollow space for where the bubble cockpit would be on Obi Wan's starfighter. And then the whole rest of it is just built upside down on this dark red jumper piece. So yeah, it was a really, really tricky thing to represent at this scale, but I really wanted to capture the kind of appropriate size and sleekness for it, and I think that I've done that, even though Lego would definitely shake their head and say, bad stuff. But hey, I'm okay with it. All right, next up we have kind of the workhorse of the Republic. This is the LAAT, or the Republic Dropship. This is such cool design because it really borrows heavily from kind of Vietnam War era helicopters that were used by the US military, and it has a really aggressive look, and it's almost instantly identifiable what this thing is when you first see it on screen. You know that this is a troop carrier. It's a heavy artillery kind of support craft, and when they make their debut on screen, it's a very cool scene where they kind of descend down into that arena and they just absolutely annihilate all of the droid forces and create a perimeter around the survivors. So that was really cool. And that was actually one of the scenes that I chose to replicate in my intro, because I just love the way that these things kind of made their screen debut. So the way that this is done, it has a few kind of interesting little bits to it. The side wings are attached using these clip plates, which are attached in to the side of just a regular 1x1 red plate, and then that plugs into the body, which is there's a Technic plate in there, or a Technic brick inside of there, which holds onto the plate on either side, and then the whole engine assembly then just clips onto that, and then the wing clips onto that, and it's got so these are the engines, and then up here is kind of this rack of missile launchers, which I've just very simply represented with this 1x2 grill tile. And then the front, to get the cockpit angle, I just have this old style hinge piece, which just perfectly lines up and gives you the exact kind of accommodation to be able to put this piece on there. I tried to use a regular clip and bar like I would normally do, but there's not enough space to accommodate that in there. So this ended up working out perfectly. And then there's a little bit of that lime green accent up at the front, and of course a couple of minifigure hands for those front laser cannons. And then this section kind of represents, there's an opening door in here where some these little bubble turrets can come out, and sometimes they have those and sometimes they don't. You know, it depends on if, you know, whether they're deployed or not. And so that would be where that is in here. And then this represents those kind of sliding doors at the back, which is entrance to the troop carrying section of the ship. And they have these little kind of window slits on there, and that's represented in the model using these slope pieces. So that all worked out pretty great. And then again, with Slave 1, it's just this 1x2 brick with the studs on either side that just kind of creates the whole framework on which this all rests. So there's that. Oh, and then there's these two little additional, I think these are, I don't believe people actually sit in these, or no, people do sit in these. People sit in these little turrets on the outside of the wings, and they can fire down as well. So this thing is absolutely armed to the teeth, and it's a really cool ship, and I'm super glad to have it in my Republic Navy. And next up, we have a pretty interesting one, which is the LAAT/C, which is essentially a modified version of the regular LAAT, but it just has the undercarriage stripped out and is modified for carrying cargo and ships and tanks and things into battle. It's actually a little bit larger in universe than the than the LAAT. The front section extends down further and the wings are longer, and I have that represented here by having a 1 stud longer width on the wingspan. And I believe that on the actual source model as well, the angle of the wings is steeper like it is on here, and they don't have those little bubble turrets on the wings like this guy does. The other difference with this is that there's a single cockpit at the front because there's no need for gunner position since this is primarily just a dropship. It does have these turrets at the front in similar configuration to the LAAT proper version, but I am not sure who winds up firing those. Just the stand popped off here. I don't know if, I guess the pilot can operate those, or maybe they're automated, I'm not sure. But the cool thing about this is that if you have your ATOT, which is the troop carrier, or your ATTE, which is the tank version of the troop carrier, they can actually be picked up and carried by this ship. So let me show you how that's done. So they have these kind of grabbing arms up in here, and then essentially you just place the vehicle in here and you just clamp these 2 handles onto the sides, and making sure that's on there correctly. And your dropship will just carry the forces into battle, plop them down like that, detach, and then take off. So that's definitely something that I think we saw that happen once on screen, and I'll give you a closer look at these guys in a minute. I believe that happened once on screen in the Attack of the Clones movie, and it's been a fan favorite ever since. I think everybody just loved the idea of seeing these things just dropping off. It had like a really cool kind of motion to it, where they do the drop-off sequence and they just, you know, fly away without anything else underneath, and it's just a really cool look. I think a lot of these guys wound up getting blown up right as soon as they drop off their cargo. Unfortunately, clones are pretty expendable in those movies, and in the Clone Wars series too, they kind of deal with that. But yeah, I mean, these are still super cool looking craft. The kind of similar configuration for the way that the wings are attached, except instead of using the plates on their side plugged into a Technic brick like on the other one, I'm using one clip here and one clip there that are grabbing onto alternate sides of the engine assembly, and then I just have a stud on front and back to kind of even that out, so that the whole thing has a similar kind of profile to it. But yeah, there is the LAATC, a really, really cool design, and something that I'm very, very happy to have in the fleet as well. Okay, and next we'll take a look at the ATTE. This is a kind of forerunner to the Empire's AT-AT walkers. You know, they're a lot shorter. They have 6 legs, obviously. This is how they stack up. And there was a really cool arc in the Rebels show where one of these was being was kind of converted into a whimsical Miyazaki-style walking castle, and was being used as basically a mobile home for some of the surviving clone troopers. So that was definitely a really cool arc. If you guys haven't checked out Rebels, I think it was worth it even just to see that story arc. It was really cool. So with the actual ship, I'm using somewhat of an illegal technique here to have the feet just be kind of mounted onto these legs at an angle. They do like to sometimes pop into their kind of default positions like this, so you just have to like, you know, just move them down like that and just get them back. It can be a little stubborn, but it usually works out. And then, you know, there's this massive cannon on the top, which is actually manned. This is a turret, and there's a guy that'll sit up there, and he'll actually, you know, he'll actually aim this thing and do the firing. I feel like he's probably quite exposed, but, you know, such is the risk of the job, I guess. There's a couple of large turrets on the back here as well, which I think are automated, and those are kind of on ball socket kind of situation on the back end of this. I've just represented it using these fairly new bar with stud pieces on them, and you know, those can be rotated up and down. They don't quite have the same full range of motion that the real one does, but at least they're articulatable. Yeah, so these are a really, really awesome vehicle that can be seen all throughout the Clone Wars series doing all kinds of crazy stuff. There's even a scene in the first few episodes where they're climbing up like vertically up the side of walls using cables and all this crazy stuff. So these are really a very iconic and cool vehicle, or they have come to be anyway over the years. So yeah, I'm really glad to have this one again to add to the fleet. I feel like I say that with every single one, but each one that I do, I just have a little bit of extra appreciation for the design of it. So yeah, there's the ATTE, a really cool little build. Then we have the cousin of the ATTE, which is the ATOT. This is basically a modified troop-carrying version of the previous one that I just showed. And when you stack them up side by side, you can see a few obvious differences right away. This one has 8 legs, and then it has this hollowed out section in here, and this green part represents where the troops will sit. There'll be kind of two rows of troops sitting in there. And then this is a little door, kind of ramp, to allow them to disembark and go into battle. You know, there's no major cannon on the top, so it has a lot less defenses. I've kind of pared down the size of these cannons. Like here there's these 2 large cannons above and below this line that I have with these binocular pieces. But for this one, it has smaller cannons, so I'm just using these clip pieces to represent that. And then it has these ones on the bottom here, which are using these very large kind of bar pieces in comparison. Yeah, it's pretty similar to the other guy, to the ATTE, but I think it's different enough that it warranted being made, and definitely for the functionality of being able to plug this into the dropship, that definitely made it worthwhile. And then just have a couple more little cannons back here that are using minifig hands. The same kind of technique I'm using here for the legs, with these Exoforce hands clipped into these 1x1 clips at an illegal angle, but it doesn't seem to stress the parts too much. They don't seem to mind. So as long as you are cool with readjusting them every now and then, which I'm fine with, it works out pretty well. So yeah, there's the ATOT. Then of course it would not be an episode of the Microfleet series without a look at all of the ships currently in the fleet so far in one shot. So here's all the recent ones that I just showed you guys from episode 2, mixed in with all of the rest of the episode 1 and original trilogy sets as well. And we have the Rebel Squadron, and of course the gigantic droid dropship, and the lovely medical frigate back there. And in here, nestling away, we have the Tenta V4 and Imperial Shuttle. And on this side, we've got the Rebel GR-75 transport. So yeah, looking at the collection from Attack of the Clones, it's a pretty small group. Like I said, I mean, like size-wise, there's quite a few of them, but they're not the biggest. But yeah, that's really cool. You know, there's a lot of variation amongst all the different movies, and that's something that is reflected obviously in this series. And as it continues to grow, we'll see even more diversity of different shapes and colors. And yeah, you guys are going to see some really cool stuff coming up pretty soon. So next up, we're going on to Revenge of the Sith, and then we'll be doing the in-between movies, the Rogue One and the Solo movie. I have quite a few vehicles from those to show you guys. So that's going to be a lot of fun, so stick around, check those out, and if you guys enjoyed the video, you know I appreciate the thumbs up. If you guys did enjoy it, thumbs down. Honest feedback is the best kind. I will see you on the next video, and may the Force be with you. Thanks for watching.